Somebody shot my dad. I get the killer mentality. I come from murder and tragedy. Single burn home and family. Do this shit for my whole family. I'ma go get me a Grammy. You know that I'm missing you, granny. Backbone to my whole family. I got to turn for the family.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Life After the Gunshot. I am your host, Doc Joe Rich, with my co-host, my
Hey
man,
guys,
Mello.
guys, bullets with no name. Hey, I hope you guys are staying safe, during this Corona season. Hopefully we'll be pulling out of this soon. Hey, I want to say rest in peace to Nipsey. His birthday just passed. I was watching this clip of him the other day, man, and he said some real enlightening words. He said that sometimes he felt like he was fighting against himself. You know what I mean? So I just want to salute Nipsey and everything that he done, and God rest his soul.
So shout out to, I want to say before we get started, this show is being sponsored by Marie Josephine Cakes.
Hey.
You know what those cakes are like? I mean, some arugula, got some apricot, chocolate, pecan.
And her cheesecake is off the hook.
Follow her on IG. So let's get to it. This brother who we're about to bring on, we don't even need to introduce him. We're gonna let everybody see how he's living. Play that slide.
Well, shit, we might have to introduce him.
We might have to. You don't know what our producers be doing sometimes in the backstage. So
they
look,
be leaving us hanging.
Let me give you. Let's go into how we even met this brother. So first of all, Life After the Gunshot, when it first started, and we had completed the post-production, and we were just having this conversation about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He had connected us with Jerry Vines, who I don't know a lot of people in DC know who Jerry Vines is, but Jerry Vines is a brother, powerful brother that's responsible for a lot of films that have been on BET. And it is a magnet in the film industry. All right, we're gonna get to that. Hold that off. But he put us up on this brother, and we connected with him over our project that we create in Life After the Gunshot. And then last week, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and shout out to Rollo. We had the Ride for Peace in DC. And he was out there with us, and I said to him then, I was like, bro, you gotta come on the podcast, man, because we definitely need to hear your voice. People need to hear what you're doing. DC needs to hear you, the DMV needs to hear you, and the whole nation needs to hear, your story. And so this is amazing, brother. I think we got the clip all queued up.
And the crazy thing is that before you even said to bring him on, I was already on it.
Yeah.
I already then reached out to it. You know what I mean?
We had
great
already,
minds thinking alike.
Yeah. So it's a brother we've been wanting to bring on, so it's only right that we brought him on at this point in time. So let's cue up the clip. And once again,
the video playing with no sound.
Life After the Gunshot. This is our man, Charles King, aka Boobie 617, at the Lincoln Heights Recreation Center, and everybody in DC knows what where Lincoln Heights Projects is. So he's out there giving out book bags to the kids. And just to give you a little bit of backdrop on him, Charles King is the founder of H.O.W.L, helping others with life, and he's also a counselor at the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services for DC. And without any further ado, we see what he does. We see his level of work. He's gonna tell y'all that when he comes on. Let's bring on my man, Charles King, aka Boobie 617.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Welcome, brother.
What's up, man? How you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling great, man. I couldn't feel better.
Welcome, brother. So before we jump in, we just told you about how we met you, with and how you hooked us up with Jerry and then the bike ride and Che was just saying he was already trying to bring you on the podcast for all the work that you're doing in DC, working with kids, as we just showed the clip you out in Lincoln Heights. And we, it's multiple clips of you out there in the community doing work. So before we even get into that, I just want to start with the backstory, man, because you have like an interesting backstory. You're born and raised in DC. So let the people know a little bit about, what it was like growing up in DC as you came up in DC and how you got to the place where you are right now.
Well, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I was born in Columbia Hospital for Women. I was raised in Northwest, and back in the days when we was growing up, it was a lot different than it is now. I mean, it's bad now to some people's standards, and I don't downplay that at all with anyone. You feel what I'm saying? Because crime is crime, a loss is a loss, a victim is a victim, whatever it may be. But it was a lot different. It was more community, but once the crack epidemic hit, everything just kind of like scattered, right? And the city just went crazy, right? That's why we was the murder capital, just because of,
Mm-hmm.
the crack epidemic. So if you know about the crack epidemic in any form or fashion, I don't care what part of the United States you were from, right? That's the era that I grew up in Washington, D.C., right? When I was growing up, it was probably averaging between Prince George's County and DC, maybe about 600, 700 murders a year,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
that's the era that I grew up in. And, I just had the opportunity to grow up in a city that was considered chocolate city. So I seen
Mm.
people that look like me my whole life. Uh, I've lost a lot of people that I know. I've lost friends and, family members throughout my life growing up just because of the violence that was going on in the city, and I've been the person that's been on both ends of the gun, So I just, went to prison in 2003, and I was released to the halfway house in 2015. And since my return back to the community, I've been very active in just trying to keep people from going through what I had to go through, whether it's prison, being on either side of the gun, or, just showing them that it's an opportunity for us to make it by me being an example.
That's interesting because, Che and I talk, like in our work, we talk about this all the time, and working in the, hospital violence intervention program that we started. And a lot of times I think what people tend to ignore, at least in the hospital violence intervention program world, is that guys come into the trauma unit that might be hit, but we never really show the opposite side of what that looks like too. And so being on both sides of the gun, what is it like being on the side of the gun? Because the people that you work with out there in the streets of DC have been on both sides too. What is it like being on one side of the gun at one point in your life and on the other side of the gun at another point?
Well, I think being on one side of the gun, especially being on the, I would say being on the, not on the receiving end of the bullet, but being on the side of the gun where you're actually the aggressor, I would use it in that term, right? Um, everything has a reason. No wakes up pretty much and goes out and say, I'm just going to hurt somebody today. Like, that's psychopathic, right? I mean, I think it's more being on one side of the gun is ignorance, but your ignorance leads to what you believe is self-preservation. But those things can be negated in other forms of fashion, right? And being on the receiving side, it's another situation where you're the victim, right? And when you get shot, like you just don't know what the end result is going to be or how it's going to turn out. So, you know, being having a balance. Everything in life is a balance. You understand what I'm saying? We got a positive and a negative, an up and a down. So life has to be balanced. There's no way that you can think that you're going to keep on being the one given and never receive.
So I want to kind of go back a little bit. You say you did a time in prison. While you was in, did you ever think that you'd be doing this work? Or this something that came to you once you were released? Or how was that whole process?
Well, I think that I've always been a giver, right? No matter what capacity I was in my life, whether I was in the streets or now I'm home and I'm, a civilian working and paying taxes. I've always been a giver. So I think that what I'm doing is just being who I am. But right now I have a platform to do it in a way. So I just really think that it's always been
Okay.
who I am. It's not nothing that just came about right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of people, you know what I'm saying, since I've been doing this work and just being around in my family in general, man, you see a lot of guys from this area that grew up in the streets, and naturally they are givers. You know what I mean? They want to help, their family or their people. You know what I mean? And I think that, sometimes we just got to tap into that positive, way of thinking. You know what I mean? Because if we don't take care of us, who's gonna take care of us?
Yeah, I could understand that and agree with that, right? Just like the brother just come on y'all post, V. That's one of my childhood friends. I don't have a lot of childhood friends still around, right? So he's one of my childhood friends, and like it's people that can attest to the things that I say. Everything I say can be verified, right? I'm still a giver right now. My finances might not be the same, but I'm gonna give you what I got if I'm in a position to do it, because that's just who I am. I think that it starts off as preservation, but when you're a giver and you have more than what you need, you start to, distribute out to others.
So let me ask you a question. What would the 16-year-old Boobie say to the Boobie right now?
That's a good question.
If the 16-year-old Boobie was probably talking to me, he'd probably be telling me, man, I ain't trying to hear that shit. Excuse my language, right? That's what the
Nah, that's
16-year-old
not what
would be
you're talking
saying.
about. Right.
That's what he'd probably be saying to me right now. And I would have probably listened. I would probably listen because I was a little bit more mature, right? But after you would have talked the whole in my head, it would be like, God, I'm tired of hearing it. But I would have listened, and I say that because I have listened, right? I might didn't water that seed when you gave it to me, but it eventually was watered later on, and it blossomed. That's how you see the person that you see in front of you today.
O.T.L. Mafia music. I don't really do the computers. I'm in the street with the movers. I'm on the block with the shooters.